go down.
Yes, sir.
I saw Hansam here first. I'll come to you.
All right. I want to inquire now. How can you change the Constitution?
All right, good question.
I have a simpler question.
Same question.
Simpler. An easier question.
Yeah.
A person who receives, who becomes a citizen, not by natural birth, but by residency or something like that, I would imagine that they would have the same constitutional rights. But if they break the law, let's say murder, manslaughter, drug offense, will their citizenship be revoked?
All right. I'll come to you. Two things. Our Constitution can be changed, but the Constitution is not changed like ordinary laws, because it wouldn't make sense to have this most important law, the supreme law of the land, that once somebody gets in power, they can change it every time. When somebody gets in power, they change it every week. So to change the Constitution, you must have the vote of 2/3 majority in order to change the Constitution. So, that's right, that's right. Because some of these things are so important that you wouldn't want them to change willy-nilly. Yeah. So the most important things will take you a 2/3 majority. As a matter of fact, sometimes when an ordinary law is being passed, but it can infringe on the Constitution, what you do, you can, in passing that law, it can be set out that that the Constitution is being amended accordingly. Yes. But you just can't go and take away constitutional rights by passing an ordinary law. That's the first thing. The next question here is, if a person who is given paper citizenship, any person to whom citizenship is given, citizenship can be taken. It is not, no, it's not automatic. It's not taken away easily, but if I give you, for example, you can't take away Barbadian citizenship. But speaking about this thing about if you're convicted of a serious crime, as a matter of fact, it does not have to be a serious crime. Some people are convicted in magistrate's court of certain criminal actions, and those are especially more so illegal people who are illegal. But you don't, and when you're in Barbados, you have the full protection of the law and the Constitution. The Constitution protects all persons who are within our realm, not just citizens. There are one or two things that would apply to citizens only. For example, I just said, or earlier I said, that you cannot prevent Barbadians from coming to Barbados. Of course, you can prevent non-citizens from coming to Barbados. But when a person commits a crime, it doesn't automatically flow that because you commit a crime they have to be deported. But the immigration department can come and seek a deportation order against you. But and again, you don't get any special punishment because you're a non-citizen. Everyone in Barbados has equality before the law. So nobody asks you where you come from. You commit murder, you commit manslaughter. But if you're a bitch, I give you 10 years. But if Vincent, you get 15. It doesn't work so. Everyone has equality before the law. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Earlier on, you talked about the Constitution in England.
The
Constitution in England. And you said that they could make a man a woman or a woman a man. But not be done in Barbados. Is this because the Constitution in England is not written?
You're on the ball. You're on the ball. In Britain, the Parliament is supreme because their constitution is not written like ours. But with our written constitution, our constitution is supreme. You have to work according to our constitution because we have this written constitution which ties up things. Yeah. Yes, sir.
With these constitutional matters, is that where the brains have to see?
Come again.
When a lawyer talks about bringing a has it has some constitutional infringement?
Not really.
Okay.
What a class action suit is, let us say that 20 persons had the same, what they consider the same wrongdoing done to them. A person may go forward on his own behalf and on behalf of the other 19. It has nothing to do with constitutional right at all. It is just an action on behalf of several persons.
Question again with respect to police. I see in the pamphlet, it says you have to consent to search, except for the search warrant. I've heard this concept of reasonable grounds. If the police have reasonable grounds,
Let me say to you,
you can be searched. Is that with or without consent? And what constitutes reasonable grounds?
okay. I'm glad you brought up that point. One of our constitutional rights is a right not to be searched against your will or not to be searched without your consent. Therefore, if you go, for example, in Venezuela, at least it was so that it was last year, the police just stopped the bus, if you're a bus, and it is so commonplace when the Peterhota, that's the abbreviation of that type, like the task force. When they stop the bus, the men automatically get out, put their hands in the air, and go against the bus to be frisked. That's an automatic thing. We don't, no police can't just come and stop every bus in Barbados and start searching you. Because the Constitution gives you that right not to be searched against your will. Similarly, some employers, if they think that you stole something from them, they want to search you. They don't have that right. Again, before somebody, listen again carefully. When you work at some places like hotels, for example, when you get the job, you agree that you are subject to search. You agree that you may be searched. So therefore, that searching is with your will, is with your consent. Now back to your story. But we do know sometimes the police stop vehicles, especially at night, and search them and search people. In strict law, the position is that they do it if they have reasonable suspicion. Not that you personally have committed a crime. Let us say that a crime was committed somewhere in this area, and the police see motor cars coming here. They have reasonable suspicion that the crime was committed. There's a possibility that the criminal could be this vehicle, so we are going to stop this car and carry the search. Now the question you ask, I cannot give you a black and white answer, like what is reasonable suspicion, because sometimes if somebody make a slip up, that they can make unreasonable suspicion. But how I say it, you know, that especially in days like these, sometimes it's better to give a little rights, put up a little discover of being searched, than next thing 3 people pass with guns in the cars, and because you were fighting and the police backing off, that happens. But as I said, I want to repeat again, a lawful search can only be carried out if the police has reasonable commission that some crime has been committed, not that you have committed the crime. Because you don't have to have committed the crime, and you don't know who committed the crime. A crime has been committed, I see cars, I want to search. And if you don't give the police that right, you could find yourself sometimes in a serious problem. Sometimes crime would not be solved. So those are the kinds of things that, again, it goes back to what I was saying, every constitutional right has its restrictions and its exceptions. I saw another, yes, sir.
Am I right in saying that the death penalty has not been introduced, for a while now, and not been used for a while now? Is that true? I think I heard something like that.
No, it's very true. It's not been used for a long time.
Okay.
There's over a decade nobody was hanging in Barbados.
There's like increasing on crimes now. Do you think that whenever the
You know, as I told you earlier on, that there were some questions about the death penalty being cruel and inhuman, and that has not changed the law in Barbados. No court in Barbados has ruled that it's cruel and inhuman. But there's a Privy Council case, Pratt and Morgan, which set out guidelines which says, for example, that a person should not be kept on death row for too long a time, forever, never, amen, and then you grab him behind him. And what has also been happening, that persons in Barbados who have been convicted of murder, they've been applying to regional judicial organizations, and which, quite frankly, don't believe in the death penalty. And they've been they exhaust all their rights before they can be hanged. And years can go by, and I suspect that if somebody goes to get hanged who was on death row for a long time, they'll probably bring some action. But the death penalty is still very much a part of the law of Barbados. Has not been abolished. I understand there's some talk about abolishing the death penalty as a compulsory sentence. In other words, once a jury says guilty of murder, the judge has no choice but to sentence to death. But in some jurisdictions, it depends upon the nature of the murder, because there are different kinds of murders. I mean, in every one somebody dies, but sometimes one could be an act of passion. People get ignorant and fly off the handle, and probably sorry 2 seconds after they've pulled the trigger or used the knife. Then you have some people plot and scheme. There are all kinds of things. But so some courts in some jurisdictions, the judge has a right to determine if the death penalty should be the penalty, or if it should be life imprisonment or some other form of imprisonment. But that is not the case in Barbados at present, although I know that there's talk of changing the law to that respect. Because they're going for the non-compulsory? Yeah. I understand that Jamaica's already gone the route where it is not compulsory on the finding of a sentence of guilty of murder. But if you listen to some of these American cases where they tell you the prosecutor in some cases will ask for the death penalty, in others he will not, because you have options. In our present state of the law, there's no option, but it's believed it will be changed. But to answer your direct question, nobody's been hanged here for many, many years now, over a decade.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
In your pamphlet, it said that if you're detained or arrested by the police, it's your right to be told why they're doing so.
That's right.
So if they don't tell you why you're being arrested, or they simply just put you in jail, and they're found to be unwarranted, is there any action that can be taken?
No, good question. First thing, you should not resist the arrest. If the police comes to arrest you, you should not resist the arrest in your own interest. But when the time comes, you can then bring some action for being arrested without any knowledge of what you were being arrested for. You can take action then after that. Yeah.
How would I go about taking that action?
By looking for a
What
lawyer.
action can be taken?
But what you do, you look for a lawyer. There's no point in my trying to tell you anything at this stage, because you can't do it by yourself. So any person who finds himself or herself in that position would have to get legal assistance. Because it's not like I'm just walking the road and putting somebody in court to give you a slap in your face. It is more difficult than that, and you will need legal assistance. Yeah. But you do have that right. Similarly, you have a right to bail. But again, there are restrictions and qualifications on to when you get bail and how you get bail. But it is a constitutional right to bail. But it does not mean that you must get bail automatically. It would be a little awkward if you had dozens of persons charged with murder walking down the streets. You give them bail, and then they get picked up again and walk around like that. It doesn't work that way. There's a bail act. And the bail act tells you, the bail act acknowledges that you have a right to bail. As a matter of fact, I have a copy of it here. Chapter 122 of our laws of Barbados, and it says, subject to this act, a defendant shall be entitled to bail. So that is recognizing your constitutional right that you're entitled to bail. But listen to the first few words, subject to this act, because this act tells you certain circumstances that would prevent you from getting bail. Before we look at those circumstances, and when you get bail, any conditions of bail shall be reasonable. So if you went into Swan Street and picked up 2 bottles of mouthwash and go before the courts, it would hardly be reasonable to say, okay, give you bail, but bail in $500,000, because that would be no bail, because it would be unreasonable for an offense like that to put bail like that way. And of course, what is reasonable depends upon the circumstances. And the major reasons why or how you can lose that constitutional right to bail. The court can refuse you bail if there are substantial grounds for believing that you will come back to court. Because that's what it's all about. We want to make sure that you come back to court. So if the court has good reason to believe that you'll not come back to court, it doesn't make any sense to give you bail. I got the police looking for you again when they had you right there with them. Again, if there's substantial grounds that you will commit an offense if they let you out. You know that there are some, I think there's generally ladies, I think, who do some shoplifting in September and October. But when December comes around, they feel happier about doing it to get Christmas gifts and whatnot. So if early December you pick up a well-known shoplifter, you have reasonable grounds that she's going to shoplift for the next 2 or 3 weeks. So there's no point making the court a revolving door where you go out and come in, out and come in. If the court has substantial grounds for believing that you will commit an offense. Again, if the court thinks that you are going to interfere with witnesses, let us say some young man was raped by a woman, and he was charged. Yes, men can be charged with rape these days. And he was charged. Women can be. And he was charged with rape. And the court believes if we let her out, she's going to go and threaten this man, or bribe him, or do something, or go and look for the witnesses who were present to get them not to give evidence. That is interfering with witnesses. So you'll not give a person bail to go out and interfere with witnesses. So those are the kinds of grounds for which you refuse bail. But you can sometimes refuse bail in the person's own interest. You can imagine in a district where you have 2 sets of feuding parties, and one group stabs the other, with the family waiting to deal with this person as soon as they could put their hands on him. So in the interest of his own safety, the court can refuse bail to put him away until things cool down a bit. Now, what are the kinds of factors that the court will take into consideration in refusing bail? Now, clearly, one of the things that you will take into consideration is the seriousness of the offense. And that is the major reason why people do not normally get bail for murder. You can't commit any more serious crime as far as I know. It's the only crime outside of treason for which there can be the death penalty. So generally, people are not given bail. I said generally, people are not given bail for murder. So that's one of the things you look at, the seriousness of the offense and the nature of the offense. You also look at the character of the person and his antecedents. By his antecedents, you mean what he has done before. If you have a man who's accustomed to breaking houses, that he has a conviction card with 15 house breaking, why would you believe that if you let him out now on bail, that he's not going to break another house? So the court looks at a series of circumstances to decide if to give you bail or not. Those are just some of the examples that I've given. So sometimes you're met now with a very serious question. Does it mean then that if a man commits a serious crime, you know the serious crimes, burglary, rape, murder, these things, does it mean then that if you commit a serious crime, that you should never ever get bail? What do you think of it? What is your feeling on it? Man commits murder or rape. You think he should never ever get bail?
Depends on the circumstance.
Depends on.
Circumstance.
So how long before the case will be heard?
That's the point. That's the point. That's the most important point. The circumstances too, because I just told you there's some circumstances you look at. But we have a way of believing that you're either soft on crime if you give bail, or you're sure how tough you are if you don't give bail. But a judge has two things in his hands. He has to balance the circumstances. Would alleged murderers and rapists and whatnot could not expect to be walking the streets having just committed some crime. But on the other hand, a person should not be in jail for 6 or 7 years without being tried for any offense. Because under the Constitution, you are innocent until you are found guilty. So what must a judge do when he finds himself in a position like that? On the one hand, I have a man, I when I say a man, I mean a woman too. I have a man who has been charged with a very serious offense. Should I let him out? On the other hand, if I don't let him out, well, this is 7 years in prison now, and nobody has brought his case before the court. Suppose when this case comes before the court, he is found not guilty. It means that an innocent man has been in prison for 7 years. So what is the answer? The answer is not to keep people incarcerated for several years without bail. Neither is it to be expected to be charged with a serious crime and be out there walking about. The answer, therefore, is that persons who are charged should be brought to trial in a reasonable time. It's as simple as that. Because you have to balance the interests. Now, what is a reasonable time depends upon all the circumstances. What is reasonable for snatching a bag is not the same thing as what is reasonable for committing rape or what is reasonable for committing murder. But it is unacceptable to expect that after 6 or 7 months you'll walk around free as a person charged with murder. It is just as unacceptable to accept that you'll be in prison for 6 or 7 years without being brought to trial. The answer is to give persons speedy trials. And by speedy trials, I cannot expect a speedy trial to be something that will be in 2 weeks or 2 months. But certainly, one cannot be expected to spend sometimes what might be the length of your sentence without being brought to justice. Similarly, and I know this is a difficult time now with all this gun talk now, Well, you won't put all these gunmen out back on the streets. Certainly you must not put all these gunmen back on the streets. Don't worry, gunmen. When people are picked up and charged, of course you're going to have some good reason for charging them. You can't just throw them back out. But on the other hand, you can't lock them up, throw away the key without a trial. When you try these people and you find them guilty, it's up to the judge to decide how many numbers of years and years and years and years and years. So again, I repeat, what is reasonable depends upon the offense and other circumstances. It is unreasonable for you to expect, because it's your son or your sister or your cousin, that this murderer going home now, not this murder, this alleged murderer going home after 2 weeks, and next he come back here so he kill us away again. That would be unreasonable to expect that. It is just as unreasonable to have someone wasting away in prison for 7 years. The machinery must come together to work for good. And as a matter of fact, I think that the whole society has to work. This is not the police alone. This is society business. Sometimes you hear about some kind of serious offense having been committed. And you don't hear anything else about it. So you forget that somebody did something real bad that should be punished. I think it's in the interest of all, if the police has done their work to arrest you, then you must be brought before the courts, and then you're punished. And if all this is done in a reasonably short time, and I said sometimes it will take more years sometimes. It can't be done in 6 months necessarily, but certainly 5 and 6, 7 years is too long. And the society feels more comfortable when they hear that those who have committed crime have been punished. And those who have been charged and it is found that they have not committed a crime will not have spent an inordinate length of time languishing in jail. Someone's asked a question at the side. So that's it? Yes.
So before,
I there's another one. I think those two.
Two more questions after this one.
Right, in your initial remark before you started, you referred to 40 mediators in, no,
Train, yeah.
in training. Will these help to alleviate the easy justice system so that these serious criminal matters can get before the court?
That is the hope. But before the mediators can start to operate in the communities, there has to be a framework within which they will operate. And we're working on that to make suggestions to the governments. Legislation. Our mediation draft bill should be completed by the end of the year. Then we will see what happens. We have then to present it to governments and see whether they would, accept. Yes.
It falls within the same constitutional framework that people get justice quickly.
That's right. That's right. Any more questions?
Just to clarify one point, you know that I think it arose out of what you're asking about non-citizens, etc. Everyone has the protection of the law, as I said, in Barbados. But when we're speaking about discrimination, etc., some of these things dealing with discrimination would not apply to persons who are not citizens of Barbados. Yeah. Just as I mentioned that some discrimination matters will not apply to things like taxes, that those things will not be seen as discrimination. Because as a Barbadian, you must have some special rights that non-Barbadians do not have. That's one of the great things about being a citizen of any country. Once you're a citizen of any country, there are some things that you have greater rights than others. But when it comes to the protection of the law, all citizens, all persons of our country, yes, have protection of the law. Yes?
Should we all speak to a situation where female works in a predominantly male-oriented field? Female is qualified, there are vacancies, there are no negative reports